We're joined now with some reaction and analysis of all of this by Seth Kaplan. Seth is an aviation journalist, so you know this industry quite well. I guess you could take up some of the issues that Edward raised in his report there in order and just see what the kind of the talk around the industry has been. First of all, the criticism that was answered there, asked and answered, of officials for being late to the game. Is that seen as fair in terms of grounding the airplane, following rather than leading here in the United States?
Well, at least in a narrow sense, the FAA did what it had always done. It basically said, look, let's wait to get the data from the black boxes, the voice recording also. What was new here, and sort of threw them a curveball, is that in the old days, you didn't really have much to work with until you had the black boxes. This time, you did have that satellite data. He mentioned Canada reacted just before the U.S., but also just other sort of more rudimentary satellite data where you kind of knew what might have happened, at least, rather soon after this crash. So in a narrow sense, they were just doing what they had always done. The difference being that, yeah, around the world, people sort of thought there were enough dots to connect to say, look, we know what at least partly caused the Lion Air crash, and that might have also contributed to this, and maybe take the fleet out of the sky. Right,
connecting the dots, whether that was the right thing to do analytically or not, the reference to data there. What about the relationship, the cozy relationship that's been criticized between the regulators and those that they regulate? We've seen that in other industries. We've seen it over the years come up on Wall Street as an example. Is that seen as legitimate or seen as something that kind of misses the point here?
Well, as long as everybody in the industry can sort of say, look, you can say what you want, but this industry is the safest it's ever been, it was kind of hard to say that things weren't working, right? Here, although in the aggregate, that's still true, right? I mean, overall, you're still safer getting on an airplane now than you've ever been. You had these two disasters with one fleet type that made up a very small percentage of the global fleet, a very new fleet type, right? And then that becomes harder to say here. And so, the question of whether something went wrong with the certification process, I mean, rather clearly something went wrong. The question about whether something, nefarious happened or whether it was just kind of an innocent FAA under-resourced, relying a lot on Boeing and its engineers, that's what we'll have to see here in the coming weeks and months.
As a final point, Boeing's handling of all this. Today was about the regulators and their issues with safety and how they go forward. But what about the company introducing the software fix? It, at least in the short term, helped its stock price today. But what's your take on how Boeing has handled all this?
I think in the first days after Ethiopian, they probably should have been quicker to see how the movie was going to end. I mean, at some point, a couple of days before the planes were grounded in the U.S., you kind of knew that that's where this was going. Yeah. By the time the FAA did what it did, there wasn't much left to do because the fleet was essentially grounded almost everywhere in the world. But now, yeah, they're taking the steps they need to take to ensure that, look, they know they're part of a duopoly, right? It's not like Chipotle where there's lots of other places to eat when something goes wrong there. Airlines want to believe in this plane. An airline like Southwest with 700 737s, they don't want to buy Airbus planes. So they just need to take these steps, give airlines, governments, and the flying public confidence. And this program could, in the long run, be a success that had just a tragic start.
All right, Seth, good stuff. Thanks for the expertise. We appreciate you coming on today. You can see the hearing is still going on. We'll keep an eye on it and bring you the latest headlines.